One night, Edward returned to the sheds to find Gordon grumbling to his crew. "I've been crossing the island all day, and now I have to take a fish train? Absolutely not." "Fat controller's orders," scolded his driver. "Besides, Henry's had an accident, remember?" "Doesn't seem very reliable of him now, does it?" "Now is that fair?" Edward asked. "Henry's covered the express when you've been ill more times than I can count, and has never once complained." "Of course he hasn't. The express doesn't reek of fish." "Then I'll take the kipper," retorted Edward. Gordon's grimace fell to a look of concern. "Are you sure? It's a heavy train for an old engine like you." "I've pulled trains heavier than the kipper without any issues. Besides," chuckled Edward, "I won't get any sleep if you keep boiler aching all night." Gordon huffed. Edward asked the crews if they could swap jobs, and when they said yes, Edward set off to find the train. "I suppose I can have a rest now," smiled Gordon. "Not a chance," said the driver. "I just got word that Boco's broken down. We'll have to cover the midnight goods." "What? Oh, the indignity!" The workmen were loading the vans when Edward puffed in. He didn't realise the vans for the train were visitors from the mainland and were sorely lacking in discipline.
"What's that?"
they cried.
We want a big strong engine, not a little blue teapot."
"Come along now, no nonsense, please." Now Edward was only being friendly, but the vans took it completely the wrong way.
"Who does he think he is?"
they grumbled.
"When he pulls us, hold him back."
The vans giggled as they passed the word. Edward was completely unaware. When the last door banged and the guard showed his green lamp, Edward tried to start, but the vans held him back. He pulled and pulled, but it was no use. "Oh, you silly things," cried Edward. "I asked you to come quietly." "Oh, sorry, little teapot. Seems our brakes must have slipped on." And the vans laughed loudly. Edward groaned. Perhaps taking the kipper wasn't such a good idea after all. Soon they were out on the main line. Edward was trying to make up for lost time, but the vans had other ideas. "What a boring night," they complained. "Come on, Teapot, let us have fun." "Work is more important than fun," said Edward sternly.
"Is that so?"
asked the vans.
"Well then, let's make you work."
And with a bump, they pushed Edward forward. "Oof!" cried Edward. "Stop this nonsense right now!" Up ahead was the station where they had to stop. Edward's driver slammed on the brakes hard. They screeched along, overshooting the platform. At last, with a groan, they stopped. "What are you doing?" cried a workman. "The station's over here." "Sorry, mate," replied the driver. "The van's pushed us." "Well, come back so we can unload you." Edward backed to the station, the vans snickering in triumph. "Oh my, seems the little teapot is begging to crack," said one. "Indeed," added another. "Now if a big engine was pulling, we'd come smoothly." Edward tried to ignore them as the workmen unloaded the vans, but he knew he was in for a long night. It was nearly dawn by the time Edward had finished delivering the fish. As he was making his way home, he started to feel tired. "What a night," he yawned. "If only those city vans would come smoothly. Oh, I can't wait to go back to the sheds." Edward's eyes grew heavy, and before he knew it, he was asleep. The vans were tittering amongst themselves when they heard a snoring coming from the front of the train.
"What's this? Has the old teapot fallen asleep?" said one.
"That won't do," chuckled another. "Let's wake him up." When they came to a red signal, the vans began their tricks. On! 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 They cried. Banging their buffers, Edward woke with a jolt, and his crew were knocked from the cab. "Help!" he cried, but no one could. They thundered down the line until Edward saw points leading to a siding. He shut his eyes and waited for the crash. When the dust cleared, Edward was derailed. Broken vans were scattered all around him, and a strong smell of fish hung in the air. "Ow," he groaned sadly. "This isn't the way I thought the night would end." Meanwhile, Gordon was making his way home after taking the midnight goods, when he saw Edward's crew on the line side. "That's odd. Where's Edward?" thought Gordon. "Hello there, what's happened?" "We were pushed off the cab by the vans," said the driver. "Think you can take us where Edward is?" asked the fireman. "Certainly," smiled Gordon's driver, and they set off to find Edward. When at last they found Edward, everyone was shocked. "Oh my," said Gordon. "What happened?" "I fell asleep," whimpered Edward, "and the vans pushed me off the line." Gordon looked to the vans. "Well, I doubt they'll cause any trouble now. They're in shock." Gordon was right. The last few vans, still on the rails, were white as ghosts and didn't say a word. Gordon brought the breakdown gang to clear up the mess. When Edward was finally put back on the rails, the big engine towed him home. "I feel so foolish," sighed Edward. "Nonsense," smiled Gordon. "It was the silly van's fault. If they were behaved better, you wouldn't have had that accident." "But it was me that fell asleep," interrupted Edward. Well, I feel I am too to blame for that," Gordon admitted, turning red. "I shouldn't have made such a fuss. It was me who should have been taking the kipper. I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused you, Edward." Edward smiled. "Oh, that's all right. Our Premier Express engine does need his beauty sleep after all." And the two friends chuckled together. They arrived at the sheds to find the Fat Controller waiting for them. "Goodness me, Edward, I am surprised. It's not like you to have a mishap like this." "I'm sorry, sir, The Fat Controller held up his hand. "I knew it wasn't your fault. It's straight to the works with you. I need you back on your branch as soon as possible. We can't leave Boko to handle the twins alone for too long now, can we?" he finished with a wink. "Certainly not, sir, and thank you, sir," smiled Edward. The Fat Controller chuckled and walked away, leaving Gordon to pull Edward to the works. Now, Edward is repaired and back on his branch line. He's much happier there and has no desire to pull the flying kipper anytime soon. But what happened to the vans? Well, they stayed quiet after the accident. Whenever they were taken out, they remained on their best behaviour and never bumped an engine again. That shows you, doesn't it?